Hello and welcome back to the lesson. In this video, we're going to be discussing about functions in Python. A function is a block of code which only runs when it is called. We can pass data known as parameter into a function, and a function can return data as a result. So let me actually go ahead and show you how to create a function in Python. Well, a function in Python is defined using the def keyword. So let's actually come over here and define the def keyword, def. Something like this, then followed by the function name. Let me call it my function, and then parentheses colon, and then we hit enter like so, and mind the indentation. And then within our function scope, now we're going to go ahead and define the block of code which we wanted to execute when we call the function. So we're going to go ahead and see we wanted to print something like hello from a function. Something like this. Alright, so this is basically how we go about defining a function. First of all, we use the def keyword, def, followed by the function name. This is basically user defined. You can give it any name of your choice, then followed by the parentheses right here, and then colon. And then after that, you hit enter. Make sure you do have an indentation here. This white space must be available. Otherwise, this print statement will not be from the function definition or function scope. So that's basically how we go about creating or defining a function in Python. Now let's go ahead and run our script. Alright, so as you can see, now that we run our program, we have nothing. Our program is successfully run, but we do not have nothing here. Our print statement here is not executed. This is because whenever we create a function in Python, we need to call the function in order for the block of code within the function to be executed. So right now what we just did is we go ahead and define the function. So in order for us to execute the block of code within our function, we need to call the function. Alright, so now let's go ahead and call our function. All we need to do is use the function name followed by parentheses. So let's come down below here, and we do not need an indentation. We do not need any white space in order for us to call our function. So now we're going to go ahead and call our function name. Remember, this is our function name. Let me actually go ahead and copy it together with the parentheses right here. Alright, and then we're going to come down below here and paste it. Alright, so friend, this is all we have to do. Now we have successfully called our function. Let's actually go ahead and run our script and see for ourselves. Yes, as you can see now, the block of code, the line of code right here, the print statement is executed now. It says hello from a function. So I believe the concept is clear for you now. Just defining a function in Python is not enough, but we need to go ahead and call the function after defining a function using the function name and then followed by parentheses, just like you are seeing right here. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and discuss about argument in function. Well, information can be passed into a function as argument. Arguments are specified after the function name inside the parentheses. You can add as many arguments as you want, just separate them with a comma. So let's actually go ahead and see how we add argument to a function. Now let's go inside of our parentheses for our function definition, and then here we're going to go ahead and pass an argument. Let's say f name, meaning first name, and then instead of hello from a function, we're going to go ahead and concatenate our argument right here. Let's go ahead and use plus f name, something like this. So this is called a function argument or parameter, meaning a data that is being passed to the function. So function do accept information as argument or parameter. So now that we have this, as you can see in the function definition, we pass data as parameter. And the same way when we call the function, we need to pass the argument. As you can see, this is the beauty of using IDE such as PyCharm. As you can see, it indicates that parameter f name, that means first name, on field. So it's waiting for us to pass our f name. This is just like a variable, and this is where we pass the data. So we pass the placeholder in the function definition, and then we pass the real data when calling the function. So right here, after calling our function within our parentheses, our function is expecting an argument, which is f name. So what will be our first name? Let me go ahead and say Mustafa, something like this. And now if I go ahead and run our script, as you can see, we'll have hello Mustafa. Actually, let me go ahead and add a space right here, space. Okay, Now run our script again. Hello Mustafa. So this is basically how we add a parameter to a function or argument to a function. So in the function definition, we pass the placeholder, and in the function colon, one colon the function, we pass the real argument. Alright, and by default, a function must be called with the correct number of arguments, meaning that if your function expects 2 arguments, you have to call the function with 2 arguments, not more and not less. So let me actually go ahead and exemplify that for you. Now let's come over here to our function definition and say we wanted to pass more than 1 parameter. Let's say first name, and we have last name as well. And then right here, I'm going to go ahead and say we should be having a space like so. Let me actually get rid of this, something like this, and come right after our first name plus space plus our concatenation operator, since we are concatenating string with string, so this is totally fine to use the plus operator. So let's go ahead and say last name. Alright, so as you can see right here, we're trying to print the first name and last name that we're going to be passing as an argument to our function. And our function right here is expecting 2 arguments, but right now we are passing only 1, which is Mustafa. So let's actually go ahead and run our script to see. Run. As you can see, we run into an error. It says missing 1 required positional argument, last name. So this is considered as the first name, but the last name is not passed, it's not specified, so that's why we run into an error. Therefore, if your function expects 2 arguments or 3 arguments, you have to call the function with that same number of argument that it requires, otherwise you're going to run into such kind of error. So now if I go ahead and specify the second argument, let me come over here and say comma Jibril. It's like so. As you can see, we even have a labeling. Mustafa is our first name and Jibril is our last name right here. Now if I should go ahead and run our script, we'll have no issue, and we're going to have our data printed Mustafa Jibril. And as you can see, by default, the order of our parameter do matters. Now that first name is the first argument and last name is the second argument, you need to pass it in that order. You need to know that the first argument that you passed when calling your function will serve as the first name because it is the first parameter. So what if you wanted to reverse the order? You want to put things randomly. Let's say maybe you want Mustafa to be the last name and Jibril to be the first name. So you can achieve that using what we called as keyword argument. You can also send argument with the key value syntax. And in this way, the order of the argument will not matter. So let me actually go ahead and show you how to do that. Now, if you come over here before passing your argument, you should add a keyword to it. So let's say the last name should be equals to Mustafa, something like this. And the first name should be equals to Jibril. So in this way, the order does not matter. Now first name will be Jibril and last name will be Mustafa because you have used the keyword argument. And now if you go ahead and run our script, as you can see, we have Jibril Mustafa. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and discuss about default parameter. So what is default parameter? Let's say for instance your function requires an argument, and then when calling the function you refuse to specify that argument. What do you think will happen? Well, let's actually go ahead and see for ourselves. Let me actually go ahead and create another function, a brand new function. Let's say def nationality, something like this. This should be our function, and then within our function we wanted to print I am from space and then concatenation operator, and then we of course need to pass a parameter right here. So say country, something like this, and then we're going to go ahead and copy this, paste it right here. Alright, so this should be our block of code that should be executed whenever we call this our function called nationality. And now let's try calling our function. Let's come down below here. Okay, remove the indentation and say nationality. Okay, something like this. So as you can see, this function requires a single argument, which is country. So let's actually go ahead and try running our function without passing our argument. As you can see, we run into an error. It says missing one required positional argument, country. So therefore we must pass the argument that the function requires in order for us to run the function successfully. So as I've mentioned earlier, the idea of default parameter is if we call the function without the argument, just like we've done now, it will use the default argument. Alright, so now let's go ahead and say the default argument should be right here. Say country should be USA, something like this, USA. And now if we go ahead and run our script, even without passing our argument right here when calling the function, we will not run into an error, but rather the function was going to use the default argument, which is USA in this our case. So as you can see right here, we have I am from USA, because this is exactly what we are printing from our function. I am from country, and our default argument right here is USA. Alright, and now let's go ahead and call our function with an argument. Copy this, come down below here, paste it, and this time around we wanted to pass an argument to it. Let's say I am from Brazil, like so. And now our default parameter right here will not be used, but instead our argument, our custom argument Brazil will be used. So now I'm gonna go ahead and have I am from Brazil. Okay, now let's go ahead and run our script. As you can see, I am from USA, I am from Brazil. Let's go ahead and add one more, paste this right here. Let me go ahead and say I am from India. Let's go ahead and now run our script. As you can see, I am from USA, I am from Brazil, I am from India. So friend, this is basically how we go about using default parameter value for functions in Python. Alright, and we can as well go ahead and pass a list as an argument. So you can send any data type of arguments to a function, be it string, number, list, dictionary, etc. and it will be treated as the same data type inside the function. For example, if you send a list as an argument, it will still be a list when it reaches the function. So let's actually go ahead and exemplify that. Let's go ahead and see how that works. Let me go ahead and create another function. Let me get rid of this. Let me say def. Let me call our function iterator, something like this, colon, and then, alright, let me actually go ahead and define a list first before our function. So let's come down here and say fruit is equals to a list of fruits. Let's say apple, mango, and orange. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and pass our fruit list as a parameter to our function. And now within our function, we're going to go ahead and iterate through our list items using for loop. So let's say for x in fruits, and then after that we're going to go ahead and iterate through our fruit list. So let's say print x. Alright, now let's go ahead and call our function. Let's come down here, get rid of the indentation, and call our function now iterator, and we're going to go ahead and pass our fruit. So let's come over here and copy this, paste it right here, and now we're going to go ahead and run our script. Let me actually give a space right here. Alright, now let's go ahead and run our script. As you can see, we have our iterated items, apple, mango, and orange. Using for loop, we went ahead to iterate through our list of fruits right here, and we print each and every element inside of our fruit list. Alright, and let me actually clarify something right here. This should not confuse you. As you can see, I use fruit. The name of our list is fruit. And right here, when passing the parameter, the function parameter in the function definition, I went ahead to use the same list name as this. So the name right here can be anything. It doesn't have to be exactly the same right here. So let me go ahead and change that, and it will work totally fine. Let's say fruit list, something like this, and this should be, copy this, this should also be fruit list. And if we go ahead and run our script, we're going to have exact same thing. So basically we are passing the list right here, this very list, we are passing it, and the value of our list will be stored inside of our fruit list here, which is our placeholder, and then it will be used within the function right here. So that's why we are having exact same thing. So I hope the concept is very much clear to you. Alright, and lastly, we're going to go ahead and discuss about returning a value. So to let a function returns a value, we use the return statement. So let me actually go ahead and define a new function. Let's go ahead and get rid of this one. Let's define a function, def, and we're going to go ahead and call our function sum. Alright, I'm going to need two parameters. So let's go ahead and say x comma y colon, and then within our function we're going to go ahead and return, let's say return x plus y. So this is basically how we go about returning value. Let me actually go ahead and change our function name to addition, something like this. Alright, and now let's go ahead and call our function. Let's say addition, and we're going to need to pass two arguments. So the first argument should be x. So x should be 4, let's say 4, and let's say 5, something like this. And now if you run our script, we should be having our answer, x plus y, 4 plus 5 is 9. So let's go ahead and run our script. We have nothing. Yes, of course we should have nothing, because right here we're not printing anything, we are simply returning the value. So now function right here is returning only the answer of this addition, x plus y. So we need to go ahead and print our answer. So let's actually go ahead and say print right here, wrap it inside like so. As you can see, we're calling our addition function inside our print function. Now we should have our returned answer printed onto the console right here. So let's go ahead and now run our script. Once again, as you can see, we have 9 because x plus y, 4 plus 5 is 9. Alright, now let me go ahead and play with the numbers. Let's say 38 plus 2. Alright, now let's go ahead and run our script. We should have 40. Okay, so friend, this is basically how we go about letting a function return a value using the return statement right here. Alright, and function definition cannot be empty. Let's actually go ahead and define an empty function. Say def my function, something like this. So you cannot have an empty function definition. Now if I should go ahead and run our script, we're going to run into an error. So we need to put the pass statement in order for us to avoid having an error when defining an empty function. So let's go ahead and pass it, pass, something like this. And now if I should go ahead and run our script, we'll have no problem even though our function is completely empty. So friend, that will be it for this video. I hope everything is clear to you and that you enjoyed the lessons, and I will see you in the next one.